Hi, and welcome to 5.5 Location. This is part of the bigger topic number 5, Operations Management, from 611 to 731 in your textbook. 5.5 Location isn't regularly tested on exams that much, but it's good to know because it leads into the distribution part of marketing really well. Alright, I've got together some study notes for you here. Feel free to have a read through. Location is often a lot about common sense. There are 3 main learning outcomes, and the big part is talking about how if you relocate, when you move different locations, how does that impact on your factories and your operations. Feel free to have a read through the notes and pause it if you like. I'm going to jump on to the main parts and the dolls just to explain where we're going. Okay, the big part here is the causes and consequences of, that's annoying, isn't it? The causes and consequences of location and relocation. So if a business is going to move overseas, what does that mean? If the business might move different states, what does that mean? Or if they move from city to country, what does that mean? When you look at big multinational companies, and when they start to move across and they get all their networks to come together, you start to get this integration of staple factors and causing globalization. They've got this word here, consider, which isn't really spelled out, and it's sort of just part, they sort of thrown it in there. I put that down to just identify. So say one of the problems or one of the effects of globalizing when you live on location as it goes through. This is the big question, I suppose. Analyze. So you'll be doing your 6 marks, 1 strength, 1 weakness. On when businesses change location, how does it change their business activity on their 4 functional departments? It's going to be 100% declarative today. There's no special skills for you, and we'll have a look at classifying and an exam question later on. We'll just get straight into it. Alright, the first part here is location, and as obvious as it sounds, it's just the actual physical place where you're doing your business at. It's different to place in marketing, where that's more looking at your distribution from short, medium and long. This one is, so if you're doing it in the city, what's good about doing it actually in the city itself? What's good to move to the country? What's good about moving it overseas? If you go overseas, it starts to get this international idea, where it's really linked to your offshoring. So you're moving all of your production facilities overseas, possibly for better economies of scale and cheaper labour. But the idea is that you're moving all of your factories into a new country. Once you've done all that sort of overseas stuff and you've made it all come together, you start to get this term called globalization. And if you can imagine if we were separate countries, go back 20 odd years, and as the big multinationals went across and started getting their factories all over the place, they started to have their shared communications, and they had the same sort of staple things appearing with their taxes and technology and so on. And how do they integrate it all together? And that's the idea about globalization. One big global part rather than just different countries operating independently. Let's have a look at some picture explanations to get sort of the idea going. Pretty much doesn't matter what kind of organisation you've got, be a profit or non-profit or NGO. They choose their location for their production, usually based off what they wanted to get out of their 4 functional, but traditionally raw materials, cheap costs, and good access to good skilled but cheap labour. By doing these things, they start to spread into globalisation. One of the big key things that actually causes this to want to go is your stakeholder wants. So if you just want to put it into hard lines, the shareholders just want to get more profit, so we're just going to offshore and take it somewhere else. The cost of production, so electricity, water, gas, steel, those kind of things get too much, so they move to a different area where it's cheaper, so they might move to different states where the taxes are cheaper. And you might get some staple pressures. Doing things that you're doing, say in the mining industries or steel production or chemicals, the environmental parts just get too onerous, so they go to a different area where it's not as strong. Or they might already be saturated and it's full of competition, so the social trends have shifted somewhere else, so they move to a different location and take advantage of new markets. All of these things cause businesses to locate into a different area or relocate altogether. So sometimes the stakeholder demands get too high and do much. They want more dollars, so they've got to move. Sometimes the cost of production get too much, so we have to move. And I put this question mark exclamation question, sort of say basically any of the staple stuff becomes too much of an external pressure, so we have to move again. What does this ultimately result in? All those sort of organizations, they find a new place to go, and this is sort of linked into the idea of outsourcing your production facilities or moving everything completely out of the country to somewhere else, offshoring. So what are some of the consequences? So what are some of the negative aspects of moving? So as these businesses move from one area to the next, what tends to happen is they choose a new location because of offshoring or outsourcing. Well, sometimes you get job losses. So traditional jobs there that were full-time are now removed, and that takes away from the spending power of the people that are there. They used to be able to spend a lot, and they can't spend as much. You get structural changes in the economy. So this is going all the way back to 1.1. where your secondary sector starts to shift and change around. You also get a thing called the brain drain, as skilled labour gets frustrated with the lack of opportunities and they move countries to a different area, so your skilled labour tends to drop. One of the big hassles too is that the pollution, the factories that used to be high on pollution, say back in the States, say 30, 20 years ago and so forth, they get shifted to China and India, and the pollution that gets made by those factories is now made into the new country where they've relocated to. And also the waste disposal. So beforehand, the countries that may have not had much plastic bottles and the packaging and so forth, that suddenly becomes very prevalent and all over the place. So it may have been cloth bags in the past, now it's being done with plastic bags, and it impacts on the environment, and then you get those staple pressures happening again. Also, you get the challenges of intellectual property. So copyright and piracy and all the patent stuff starts to get infringed. If you have a look in China and India and even Russia and so forth, the copyright laws do exist. They're just not enforced very heavily, or they're enforced every now and then, sometimes just to show that they have it under control, but the market just being the way that it is and demand for the products, people just go out there because there's easy money to be made. This can all make some challenges as it goes through. Alright, so what's the impact on location, on the business activity, on the four functional departments when you actually sort of move your location around? So previously, if we had a look, we had Apple in USA, and we had the US head office and their factories all there, and they had their marketing plans based for the US market. They're paying US taxes. When you change the location, you can have a big impact on your finances. So you're going to have to pay new taxes, or maybe even higher or lower taxes. And the exchange rate, you're going to have to deal with the exchange rate fluctuations as they go up, moving it back and forth. You're also going to have different impacts of unions. So you're going to have more collectivized bargaining as it goes through. When you have a look into your, my brain's just stopped there, into your 2.6 and your 2.7. You're also going to have different occupational health and safety standards for your workers in your business. So it might be higher, it might be less. Your marketing is going to change, so you're going to have new trends and new social wants. A lot more traditions in other countries. They might also have a different aspect on the family or the individual. You're also going to get different languages, so you have to change what you traditionally were going to do in the States and then suddenly have the new impact of languages being put through. It's going to change your packaging, it's going to change a whole bunch of stuff. Also your operations, different levels of technology. So back in the States you have your 110 volt, and then you go to different countries and you have your 220 and your 240. So that might change up some of your machines. You might have different operating standards, different IP restrictions on the internet and what the government allows you to get onto, like in China, the restrictions on Google and YouTube and Facebook and so forth. It also might change up your logistics. So when you're moving stuff really easily before, when you get into India with the different taxes and the roads, sometimes not handling the big trucks and so forth, moving stuff around won't be as easy. All these things do present, though, good opportunities for businesses to do innovation and find new ways of doing it. So it may sound like a consequence, but it also brings about new ways of thinking and new innovations to be made and created. So if they were going to China, they'd have a new head office, they'd have new factories, they'd have new marketing plans, they'd have to pay new taxes. And all of the parts in the middle with the business activity inputs, process and outputs, all the four functional departments are going to change because location has now moved into a different area. Alright, I've got a classifying thing here for you to go through. Pretty much it's like if Apple goes into China, write down one or two words in these parts here what you think is going to change, and India with the Toyota Camry, and Germany with Subway sandwiches. And just imagine in Apple it's come out of the States and it's going there for the first time. I know it says HD, but just remember think of the first one. Toyota Camry going to India from out to Japan, and maybe America Subway sandwiches first going to Germany. Think about some of the parts that might impact on these areas here, and just write down 1 or 2 words just to get your memory thinking. Feel free to pause it now and go through it. Alright, I'll give you a couple of ideas if you go back. With the marketing in Apple, you're going to have different social trends, and you're also going to have different languages. So having everything as your operating system in English, you're going to have to change it around to get the operating system so it definitely works for Mandarin or Canto. HR, you're going to have different levels of occupational health and safety. You're also going to have to do new training needs as it goes through. Your operations, you're going to have different kind of logistics. As the roads were going to get upgraded in China as they were getting built in the 90s and the 2000s, were you able to build your factories and ship them across? And particularly, say, with customs, is it going to be easy flow in and out to move stuff? And with your finances, what about taxes? Are the taxes going to be higher in China or lower? Does that make it some good benefits for you? With Camry in India, so because it's a different language again, so getting things in Hindi, Tamil or Punjab. Also with the size of the families, with the amount of people in the cars, having larger style families, can you accommodate having the 2 normal, traditional part of 2 adults and 2 kids? Are you going to change the way your marketing's done with the Camry so it has bigger and greater carrying space? With your HR, are you going to have different again, the impact of unions in India being different to America? And what about your operations with the roads being different? You're going to have to make a car that's able to handle the roads in India. So with the lane changes and difference and with the speeds, can you actually get up to 60 miles and 100 miles an hour in most of the places, or is it better just to have lower speed restrictions? And with your finances, you're going to have different kind of taxes in India. You're going to have different kinds of exchange rates as you go between the currencies. It may sound more obvious now, but think about 10, 20 years ago as they were moving, that if they were, say, to move from the States now and to, say, go into the new areas of growth such as Bangladesh, how would that change as Bangladesh is bringing its economy up and its infrastructure? How would that be different? Finally, with Subway sandwiches in Germany, with the beer culture being a lot more prevalent in Germany and people able to drink alcohol at a younger age than being in the States, the idea of providing alcohol with the sandwiches as it goes along, or bringing in potentially, say, sauerkraut or different kinds of breads, changing up the marketing so it's not just American centric, bringing this German focus as well so the German consumer likes it and gets into it. The impact of unions and occupational health and safety standards. The operations with different kind of machines and the different voltages as you go from America into Germany. And also the finances, with the exchange rate in particular. Back then with the Deutschmark going into the US currency may have been different, and then when it shifted into the euro, as the euro gets a better exchange rate to the US dollar. So that might help with your finances as you get more money as people buy the sandwiches and you get your revenue and you translate it to US dollars, you're going to get a lot more. This is meant to be a bit tough, but it's designed just to get you thinking, what happens when they shift location into different areas and what happens to the 4 functional departments? Alright, we'll have a look at an exam style question here, and this is about the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. And as they move and they outsource a lot of their IT areas into India, what will that actually go and do for their IT divisions? Why is it good and how does it help? Feel free to read through the case study and we'll get into the question. Okay, with this one here, this is taken from an old exam question, so you're going to notice explain as level 2, but they're asking for a 6-mark question. So you might think, do I have to give strengths and weaknesses? On this one, you just have to explain 3 advantages. So state the advantage and state why it's good, and do it 3 times. Going through this one here, first advantage is that you're going to deliver larger efficiency gains in the long term. So the business is going to have less wastage, and if you think back to that Muda aspect before, you might be able to get greater productive capacity and your business operates more efficiently. There's also the idea that the new workers are going to come in. They may have new skills and new ideas and new ways of looking at things. So this might bring your innovation up. This is good for your operations as You're going to have new ideas and new ways of doing stuff. This might add to your Kaizen as they bring those 1%ers in to make the process a lot better. And this is filled with a lot of things that sort of talk about some negatives, but you could say overall the outsourcing is going to decrease what they call about the high overheads. So some of the fixed costs that they're having to pay all the time. So you could pay your full-time employees a large amount of money, maybe 75, 80,000 Australian dollars on a fixed salary, or you could outsource it to India potentially, and the workers across there get decreased costs for the business. So overall, what does that do? It helps the working capital cycle and increases the shareholder meeting their needs. Bit of a tough question, but if you look for 3 advantages, state what it is and explain why it's an advantage, you can feel confident that you're getting towards your 6 marks. Alright, to finish off today, have a go at the worksheet down in the description bar, and have a go at some of the IB questions in your textbooks. Read over the study notes, which are attached down below. And do you feel now at the end of this that you could explain the causes? So why does location occur with stakeholder changes and STEPL and the cost of production going up and down? But then if they change, what are some of the consequences of doing this, such as pollution occurring, such as job losses and brain drain, and also the impact on taxes in the home country and the money used for that to pay for public goods? What are the actual effects of globalization on location? Well, think about what's happened to China and India, where the economy has gone up, jobs have gone up, but at the same time pollution has occurred. And what are some of the impacts on location with marketing, production, finance and human resources? So with marketing, you're going to have your new social trends, you're going to have to change your languages on things, provides opportunities, but there's a cost. Production, you're going to have the machinery and the technology being different, logistics. Again, these provide innovation, but again, a cost of doing it. Your finances, you're going to pay new taxes and exchange rates. This allows for potentially more profit, but then the cost of implementing it and the time to do it. And lastly, your human resources with unions and occupational health and safety. You get some ideas for new input, maybe into your Kaizen process, but then it may increase some of your costs as unions push for higher wages. So if you got to this end of today and you've got through it, 5.5 isn't asked that much in great detail, but hopefully out of all this you've got some ideas so you can write a good 6-mark question if need be. That's it from me today, and I'll see you in 5.6.